Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Today is April the 4th, 1442 on the sun, ancient moon calendar, and 2021 on the ancient Greco-Roman calendar. We are still celebrating our new year the same way that we did when we were asleep. We celebrated and celebrated and celebrated. And that's what we're doing still. I do want to actually start each call as a sovereign court action. So I am going to start this one as a court action as well, so that the things that we say when it goes on the public record, it stands as law. All rise and stand. This is a sovereign, universal, living, Article 3, ancient, Moroccan, Moorish American consular court action. I am sovereign living justice, Pauline Denise Ritchie, in capitis dimiutio nolo, in red ink, in propria personam juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. No United States corporation, company, citizen, agents, principals, heirs, assigned. Welcome, Empress. Heirs nor assigned has personam jurisdiction, nor territorial jurisdiction, nor subject matter jurisdiction over me nor over any more. So a couple of the things that I wanted to discuss today is about again, our record. Just one moment. Justice, do you want to talk about that with regard to what you put in the chat, Justice Gio?
Actually, just wanted to put that on the record so people know it, because Grand Sheikh Taj talks about it over and over. Many other Moorish scholars talk about it, but a bunch of the dirtbags that claim to be Moorish teachers don't talk about it, and they know. In fact, Grand Sheikh Taj talked about this very story this last weekend, and 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks before that. So, I saw and I appreciate the work that they do to move, because yes, the people in kourte there know that the stuff is a plant there. That goes all the way back to Hawass, who was the so-called curator for them for 30-something years, and the other one before that, that they know that they moved the things from over here, took them there, took the things and painted them different colors, broke off the stuff to hide, and then make up stories for them. In fact, one of the stories that is not well known is that many of the so-called ancient pyramids over there are not so ancient. Yes, there are some ancient pyramids, but few. Most of the pyramids are modern construction that they made with cement and certain things, which the evidence is in the record. So, I point that out to show that we don't trust them no matter what they say. Bring the stuff back here, tell the truth, and then they will have a little bit of credibility. But that's the way I see it, and I just wanted, again, not to argue about it, but to know what they are actually doing.
Yes, it was completely symbolic. And
yes.
If you ask me, it was completely symbolic.
Absolutely.
And I feel that and it's not even a feeling, it's a knowing. Everything that they're doing, they're actually acting out, so that when we get to that point, we will know what that should look like. But they're acting. Because we're going to get to that point. At some point, we're going to get there. When we start to unearth the treasures that are on our land that no one else could unearth because they belong to us, and our hands are the only hands that are able to unearth that which is ours. You know, we will know how to do it. It was a beautiful ceremony that they had, and they were even in some of the unearthed places. In fact, I'll go ahead and put a link to that video in the chat if you all want to take time, you know, later and look at the video. It was really very good. It was a very good video, and they made a huge, big deal out of the ancient sarcophagus and things like that coming back and being put in their rightful places. So we're going to have to do the same thing when the time comes. Here, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Okay, hopefully this is the link. Just on the opposite, just so that you can see. Okay. Okay, there it is. The link is in the chat. So when you have some time, especially the second half, it was really good. And again, everything that we're looking at, everything that we're watching the hybrids do, there was a lot of our symbology and sigils and signs in what they were doing, but there was some stuff they could not act out because we have to know that stuff. You know, we have to know our own, how to present our own government and the things that belong to our government. So it was really good. Now, with regard to, on another note, I saw something on social media today that was very important with regard to jurisdiction. Jurisdiction, and it was actually on Portia's page, jurisdiction is determined by your language. And language determines your location. This is going to be very important for us to know. Jurisdiction is determined by your language, so is our culture, and so is everything else that has to do with us. It's determined by our language. And when I say our language, that's our language that's written and our language that's spoken. Written and spoken, it determines where you are. And one thing I know about jurisdiction, and we all know this already, but we'll just say it because it's important to say for those who may not know. You can, a sovereign Moorish American heir can sit in a chair. Let's just say you You're out at a park and you're sitting in a chair. You sit on a bench out there. Well, the sovereign heir is at ancient Morocco when they're sitting on the bench, on that bench out there. They're at ancient Morocco enjoying their ancient land. If they get up and leave and 2 seconds later a foreigner or someone who thinks they're a citizen comes and sits there, then they're sitting in the United States Corporation Company. So the jurisdiction changes altogether based on who it is that's there. Jurisdiction is determined by what we say and what we write and what we do. It's not determined by location, so to speak. Location is determined by the same thing, what we say and what we do. And that was something that it was a little bit, when I first woke up, it took me a minute to get that concept within the first 3 or 4 months of me waking up, because we've not been taught to think. No. We've not been taught to think. Grand Rising, welcome. We've not been taught to think and to know that jurisdiction is a living, breathing air. Moorish American. We've not been taught that you can be sitting right next to someone and they're in the United States Corporation Company and you're at ancient Morocco. That's something that's more important than anything, because especially when it comes to fake courts and fake policy enforcers. The policy enforcer thinks he's at the United States Corporation.
Did everybody get their happy Easter?
And, you know, and the policy enforcers think that they're at the United States Corporation Company when they're not. They're actually at ancient Morocco, but we have to speak and write, and our actions have to all match that we're at ancient Morocco. So I'll say this about language and all of that, because this is where this is the difference between Moors being taken and Moors not being taken. And Moors being run through fake courts and Moors not being ran through a fake court. It's much easier to control a people if you can control their ability to communicate their truth either to one another or to others. It's much easier to control them. If you say to them, you can only spell that this way, and if you spell it that way, if you don't spell it the way I said to spell it, then it's wrong. Well, you can control what they say if you control their ability to spell however they want to cast their spell and break their spell. And that's where ancient English comes in at. This is the beauty of ancient English. We have not had an ancient English spelling class. We've not had that. So when we see Moors expressing themselves in their ancient sovereign way, it's amazing that we all still understand what's being said. No matter how they spell it, we still understand one another. I see ancient English on social media all the time and on the public records page all the time. And I can read, they may not spell it the way that I spell nationality. They may not spell it the same way, but we still know what they're saying. That's how you take control of your jurisdiction. Because even the word jurisdiction, what does that word mean? When you break it down, it means right word. Diction is word. That's where dictionary comes from. So it's going, your language and how you express it determines where you are. And if you're, and again, we're not condemning anyone or anything, not even the hybrids. We're not condemning them for corporate English and for capital letters. They're supposed to use that because that's what we told them. They're supposed to use it. And that's okay. They need to use capital letters. Just not, they can't use them on us. They can't use anything on us. They can't do anything that has to do with us. We have to do everything that has to do with us. So it's a control mechanism to tell you that every sentence has to start with a capital letter. That's a control mechanism. But if someone says, I don't have to use that, I don't have to use that. And in fact, I don't have to use black ink either. And this is from those who've been using, and I specifically say black ink and capital letters because those are the two weapons that have been wielded against us this whole time. Those are two weapons that I don't care what's going on with the Moors, that has been used to attempt to gain consent from the heirs. Black ink and capital letters. I don't care whether it's a fake warrant or a fake bill or whatever it is. So we're not going to be controlled by that system. It's a dead system. So if you have a people who spell the way their heart says to cast their spells, and that way it manifests 10,000 different ways, but we all understand one another, then you have completely lost control of that people. And I'm seeing it on social media. The algorithms have lost complete control of us. They have. Because we all write and spell differently. But we understand one another. We've demonstrated our sovereign status yet again by existing outside of inferior corporate spelling, rules, codes, and statutes, and parts of speech. Because, you know, that we've been talking about the parts of speech. That's important because our heirs have to know that hybrid parts of speech, let's just talk about what our Grand Chief said on Friday, this past Friday, at House of Reawakening Minds. We're so grateful for him and for that platform because he read something, he read an 8th grade test. And one of the first questions on the 8th grade test was, name 8 ways or 9 ways that capital letters are used. So, of course, we're going to do our digging and our research, and we're going to look it up because we are not leaving any stone unturned. Well, when I looked up how capital letters are used, it just gave examples. The first example, it said you use a capital letter when you say I. The word, it's not even a word, I. They didn't say why it has to be capitalized. None of the research that I saw said why I must be capitalized, because it shouldn't be capitalized. It should be in all lowercase letters, and we're going to prove that. And then after that, it began to name things that the hybrids say start with a capital letter. And of course, you know what came up? Ships, vessels. So that's, again, they're sitting there telling you that you become a vessel or a ship of whoever it is that whose language you're speaking. And then it said a person. A person. We're not persons. We're not persons. It began to give names. And it said that, and even when it was saying about the use of the capital letters, I'm so glad he said that. I'm so glad he said that, because it caused me to dig even further and get more affirmation of what we're saying about why we don't use capital letters. Now again, there will be a place for capital letters down the road. And in fact, there's a place for capital letters right now, but it's not the heirs. That's not how we express based on the study. It's not anything that I'm saying or making up. I just looked at the study. Look at capitalization and what it means. So when I looked again at the many reasons, they gave 8 or 9 or 10 reasons why you know, instances in which, and this is hybrids giving instances in which they would use capital letters. So then I said, okay, I'm going to look up the letter I and see what's going on with it. So let me pull some things up on the screen for you so that you can see. And again, don't take our word for it. Get a dictionary out and start looking and doing your own study. And we're pulling things out for you, you know, so you can see. I is a pronoun. There it is right there. Let's look at pronouns and see what that's all about. Just one moment. Let me make this a little bit bigger on the screen. Because we have to know, again, what jurisdiction we're in. Pronoun. In grammar, a word used in the place of. That means that it's representing something, or as a substitute for a noun. And then they put that capital I right there. The capital I is right there. And then they put in all lowercase letters some other substitute for our, you know, there is no substitute for who we are. A pronoun is used when you don't want to say someone's sovereign appellation. No one represents the Moors, and no word represents the Moors. No word represents the Moors. And this one is in capital letters. That's a capital I. Why didn't they, if all these other words are in lowercase letters, why couldn't they put this I in lowercase letters and say that that's what it is? Because it changes the meaning. Well, what's a noun? And again, this might seem like it's elementary, but we need to know what to tell our heirs. Okay. Here, let me do this real quick too. Okay. A noun. Right here in Old French, it says noun, none, non, non, as in nom de guerre, from el nomen, or name. A noun is a name. Do we have names? No, we don't have names. We have sovereign appellation. We are not reduced to names. In grammar, a name, a word used to denote a person, thing, action, quality. Because see, people are talking about things And are you a thing? We're not things. Any word, phrase, or clause similarly used, a substantive. Sub means underneath. It means below. We don't have names. And we are not denoted. We're noted, not denoted. We're stated. And stated is actually a better word for that. So now let's look at I, because people talk about the word I. Now, if you look at this first definition, there's a capital I right here, and then a comma and a lower I, a lowercase I. It says nice in a sequence or group, but up here it says of I or I. That means they're not the same. And then here it has the letter I, but it doesn't have a comma and the lowercase I. And it's saying this capital I as a noun is an object shaped like I. Are we objects? No, we are not objects. Here it says a Roman numeral 4-1. That means it's not one. It's something. It's one of the. It's a symbol, and it's a Roman symbol at that. And Roman being capital R. They put a capital R for a reason. I wanted to go down here a little further, where this capital I is concerned, and look at number 5. In education. That's for them, not for us. In education, that's training for animals, a capital I is a mark of incomplete, given in a course not completed by the student. Period. Now, then I wanted to look at a lowercase I. What do they say about a lowercase I? Just one moment. Yes, Empress Chitali. At law, a person is a corporation. Islam. All right. I'm going to open up the call. I see in the chat that someone's trying to come in. Okay. All right. So now I wanted to look at, let me just make sure that this is still on the screen. I wanted to look at a lowercase I and see what that looks like, what it says, what it's all about. So then when I looked at a lowercase I looked it up in an unabridged. And let me just say this here about this. A capital I is shaped like I. That means it's not even what it's pretending to be. But let's look at here. This is right here. It says I, comma, noun. And the plural is I. Now, they say that I is a noun, and then they turn around in the definition and say it's a pronoun. Because it is a pronoun, it's not a noun. The pronoun, that means that it's a substitute. It's representing something, and no one represents the more. No one and no thing. The pronoun I, thought of as a word. It's not even a word. It's not even a word. The capital I is the ego. But then I looked here, right here underneath that. Let me just make sure we can see. Underneath that, I, and it gives Middle English, it's I in lowercase in Middle English. It's all lowercase, and then it says here in brackets, archaic. Well, what does archaic mean? Who was using this lowercase I as a word? Because the uppercase one is not a word. It's thought of as a word, but that's not what it is. What does archaic mean? That means that somebody archaic was using this letter in all lowercase. Archaic. And here on the screen it says, archaic, Greek, archaikos from archaia. It means old or ancient, belonging to an earlier period, ancient. Then it says antiquated and old-fashioned, and we know that that's a little bit, you know, those are some of their words because it has a hyphen in it. We didn't hyphenate words. Then number 3 says that has ceased to be used except in, and then it gives these things. It ceased to be used because we ceased using it. We ceased using it. That's it. And now we're using it in all lowercase letters. So anytime you're looking in an unabridged dictionary and you see the word archaic, most likely that is what you want to use. Anytime I see archaic, I make specific note of it, because if I see archaic or I see OBS, which means obsolete, then I pay closer attention to those because it's usually right. It's usually what we want to use, the way we want to use it. So now, the 9 reasons to use capital letters that I talked about earlier, buried within those 9 reasons is the truth. And the truth is, according to the U.S. Writing Style Manual, any word in all capital letters is either a U.S. vessel, a corporation, or a dead person. That's according to the U.S. Writing Style Manual. And there are writing style manuals all over the place, including Islam in the chat, yes. Including, yes, in all lowercase letters, it is the Great Spirit. We are the great I am, but it's I am in all lowercase letters. Because there's even some gematria associated with I, the letter I. It is the 9th letter, and we know 9 is our number. Thank you for putting that in the chat. That's good, because it's important that we know which I am we are, because even in the biblioheliotext, the hypotheticated one, in that one, they put I am in uppercase letters. Well, they're not even talking, they're talking about the government ordinance department. They're not talking about the real God. Yes, Empress Minnie, that's good. But Baba land, Baby land, yes, has fallen. Languages, listen, must go. Islam. So we want to keep looking at this, because we're going to look and look and look until we know already that what we're seeing and what the law says is correct. We also know that, for example, when we look at the Treaty for Peace and Friendship, the Treaty for Peace and Friendship, the one that is in the fake Library of Congress, and it's really not even the fake one. It's one that was hypothecated and overlaid. It was written in, they used capital letters and they used bold black ink and all of that. And then when that tells us that they know about a treaty, that tells us they know about it, but if they know about it, why aren't they obeying it? Because if you look at that treaty that they put their little stamp and seal on, that they printed up, that treaty actually subjugates the Moors and makes the citizens, gives the citizens, supposedly, gives the citizens superior status over the Moors, based on the way it's written. In other words, the jurisdiction of that treaty is wrong. It's not right for us. It's not right for us. So we had to rewrite the treaty in red and all lowercase letters, and then state and put that on the public record the right way. And many more did that. We put the suggestion out there, and we did it ourselves. And we even took a copy of that to the United States Corporation Company military so that they will see, because it is what it is. We know jurisdiction, and it's all in what we say and what we do. When we would go into those state courts, we were speaking ancient English and didn't even know it. We thought we were speaking the same English that they were speaking. They're speaking corporate English, and we're speaking ancient English because we're using our sovereign status there. But they try and talk their way past it. They try to talk their way past it because we weren't supposed to know. But now we know. And now we also know that their courts hold zero authority. Never had any and never will. Now, speaking of their courts, with regard to the fake courts, I'm seeing something, and I'm just gonna say what I've done. I can't talk about anyone else, and I'm not even going to make a suggestion on this, except to look and do your homework, do your research. We know that we're not any name in all, capital letters and black ink, but we also know that those state courts, that's all they use. So I was thinking, let the dead bury the dead. We know that to be, because we can't bury, let them bury the dead. Let the dead bury the dead. Let them give unto Caesar what Caesar's. Caesar, the fakes created that thing in all capital letters. So I let them have it. And I didn't even let them have it. In fact, I sent that thing to Guantanamo Bay. Well, I sent it to Guantanamo Bay, and now just recently they've agreed that that thing should not be on the street, operating on our land. Pauline Denise Ritchie in all capital letters and black ink. And so now the court, the inferior court, and our sovereign Supreme Court agree that that thing is, number one, is not me. That's why I'm sitting here. And number two, it doesn't need to be, because it's debt. There's nothing but debt attached to it, and we don't have any debt. And that's why I sent that thing to Guantanamo Bay, because that's not us. And they've done the same thing. They're saying, go and capture that thing. Not me, that thing. So I'm feeling there's something in my spirit that knows that that was the right thing to do a court action on that black, in all capital letters, thing, so that we could be ourselves. And now I'm seeing, and again, The things I see, some may not see, and the things some see, I may not see. But that's why we're here, and that's why we're putting, you know, that we talk to one another in this manner. And also, that's another reason why we do our own study. No one leads any of us. We lead ourselves. So that's just what I'm seeing, is that once agreement is reached, because see, there was a conflict between the living heirs and the fake court on that thing in black in all uppercase letters. There was a conflict there. There was a conflict. The fake, those inferior hybrid courts were taking more than saying that we're that thing. Well, according to the treaty, if there's any conflict between us and the citizens, the subjects, the hybrids, the foreign hybrids on our land, then the consul is to decide. And that's why I did what I did, where I did the court action, and I sent Pauline Denise Ritchie in all capital letters and black ink to Guantanamo Bay. Well, when I did that, some things happened that are beautiful things. And then I had to prove that I was not her, that thing. And I can't even call it a her, it's a thing. I had to prove that I'm not capital. I'm not capital. We're not capital, Moors. None of us are capital. I had to prove that I'm not capital. I went into the POW camp and proved that I was not capital. And that's why I sit here today, because I'm not capital. I've proven that I am exactly who I said I was, and exactly who our ancestors say we are. Now, I don't know what that test looks like for all, for all of us, on how we're going to, as all of us together, how we're going to state that we're not that in a manner that makes it so that all Moors are never taken. That when they see the Moors, there's no one is taken. I don't know what that's going to look like for others. For some, it will look like the test that I had. For others, it will look like a different test. And for some, they won't have to go through that test at all, because I'm finding that when we go ahead and do our research and do our actions according to the best that we know for our research based on the law, that the ancestors keep us protected, and they honor that. They honor our energy, and they keep us protected. So I just wanted to put that out there, that at some point we're going to have to let the dead bury the dead, with that all caps name. We're going to have to. All of us have to let the all caps go and let them go away with it. Because see, they can't leave them with all that all capital corpses running around on the land. So they have issued, and we have to, because we've all said it, that we wanted the belligerents, the corpses, off of our land. The corpses. Hybrids don't necessarily have to go unless they're pretending to be corpses, because that's actually the thing that's been causing the violation after violation, against the heirs. So we're going to have to let that thing go. And a termination of corporate contracts is a start. Liens and court actions is another. And then, when you're ready, after you've done your study, do a court action on that all black in capital letters, name, because we don't have a name. We're not pronouns. No one represents the Moors. We're not that. When you're ready, do it. Because, you know, that's kind of like something that we were not really told. And when I say told, I mean they were never going to teach us that in the hybrid school and the hybrid colleges, quote unquote. But that's something that has to be done in order for heirship, for us to state and make it so that both, quote unquote, legally and lawfully, we're the heirs. Because, see, the systems match up. Because we've been talking about the subject system, not the court system, but the subject system. Once you let that all cap thing go, and you say it, and that fake system, you put that fake system in subject status, and then the system agrees with what you said, because that's the point, is that inferior system must agree with what God said. And so now we have spoken, our sovereign court has spoken about Pauline Denise Ritchie in all capital letters, which is not me, and the subject court has spoken. We put them in subject status, and then they spoke and said the same thing we said. So they issued warrant on that thing. Not on me, on that thing. And I did too. On that thing, yes, absolutely. So that's something that we're going to have to because according to the treaty, the conflict had to be decided by us. All conflict on our land must be decided by the consul. And that was my way of deciding that issue, that conflict. I'm not at war. That thing was at war. That's what the Foreign Agent Registration Act says when it was first done, where it was declaring all United States corporation company citizens as enemy combatants. That thing was an enemy combatant to me, because it had the subject taking me and saying that I'm that thing. So we had to decide, okay, the consul is going to decide this. And when I did, they agreed. And when you have agreement on the land, then the living, breathing me is the heir that I said that I was. And that thing is not attached to me. So it's just something to think about. Just something to think about and do some study on. I mean, many of the Moors, based on what I'm hearing and seeing, many of us, that thing wasn't, it kept us in so far in debt, thinking we were in debt, because we have no debt. But it wasn't helping anybody anyway. It's throwing heirs in jail over child support and fake driver's licenses and all of that stuff. That thing has not helped us at all. Not at all. And then when you talk about conveyances and domiciles and the things that are rightfully ours, all the subjects did was use our sovereign status to get that stuff, and then change it into that black thing in their records. So our records had to say differently, and we had to put it on the public record that that's not me. And now we're everything is lining up with that. It's not an overnight process to get everything to line up with that. And when I say getting things to line up, we still have some cards and ATM cards and things like that that have all capital letters on them. The letters aren't black, but we want all of that to match what we say and what we do and who we are. So that's what we're working on now. And again, this is not something that we're making up. All we're doing is looking at the law and looking at the treaty and looking at the definitions and all of that and seeing what the truth is. So I'm grateful that attention was brought to the 9 reasons why capital letters are used, because we needed to look at that, and it just affirmed further that that's not for us. So Empress Minnie put something in the chat that's so key and so important. Babylon. See, when everyone was speaking the same thing and saying the same thing, because that's what we've been doing. We've been using the same government letterhead. We've been saying the same thing, that we are not United States Corporation Company citizens. Then in the bibliotext, it is stated that God, and I'm just going to put that in air quotes because as far as I'm concerned, if it's not the Moor saying it, ain't no God speaking. But God said, let us go down and confuse their language, because if we don't confuse their language, they're going to be able to reach the heavens. They're going to be able to do whatever they need to do, whatever they want to do. So let's go down and confuse them. Well, the confusion came with the capital letters. That's where the confusion came, and the black ink. That's confusion, because that's not what we really are. It's not. But with us breaking algorithms and stepping all of the way outside of capitalism and that capitalism system, I don't care whether you went to Harvard or whether you went to an HBCU in all capital letters, no matter where you went, or if you didn't go at all, no matter what school you went to, they taught the same thing. And that is how the hybrids got where they got and obtained the things that they seem to have obtained. But now we can't be controlled with our language. That takes us outside of a jurisdiction that's been controlling us seemingly controlling us the whole time. We're not making it up. Just look it up. Again, it's much easier to control the people when you can control what they say and what they do, and how they say what they do, what they say. If they say we can't spell our sovereign appellation, because that's what they did, they said, no, you can't spell it in all lowercase letters. You can spell it in, with a start it with a capital letter, or you can do the whole thing in capital letters if you want to do the whole thing in capital letters. None of that was forbidden. The only thing that was forbidden is writing it in all lowercase letters. So we should know by that. And then by looking at the parts of speech, because and I say parts of speech because there's an endless number of those. It's not just 8 parts of speech. That's just what they told their kids. So we're now to the point where we're outside of jurisdiction in every way. Let's just look at the many ways, because we've made a lot of progress. We do have to keep going because we're building here. This is what building looks like, is when everything that you say matches what you do and what you write. There's alignment. The alignment for us is we're outside of capitalism in the way we speak, because culture and jurisdiction is in what we say. And that's why we don't, if I say something that sounds corporate, correct me. And I tend to do the same thing, if someone says a hybrid, they have all these things and they got all this stuff and they took my this and they took my that. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Our land is right here. It hasn't gone anywhere. And we're standing on it. So I tend to, make a suggestion there. But our language and our writing must be different from what they taught us. And again, we'll use capital letters down the line as we begin to take full possession, and we've already taken full possession. We never lost it. But as we go, once we clear up the mess, because it was a big old mess, and there are more who still don't know that there's no name in capital letters and that they're not anything that has to do with a capital letter. A representment of them. There's no one represents the Moors. No, none of us do. We present ourselves. So, and then, when it comes to representment of the Moors, and, we talked about this when that whole mask thing first came out. Being something you're not is wearing a mask. Pretending to be a citizen just because you don't want them to send you a note saying that there's a war rant, and they can't send it to you, they just send it to a mailbox. Pretending to be them, a citizen, just to avoid that that's not going to make it better. It's going to make it worse. It's not going to make it better. And you're wearing a mask when you do that. And we don't wear masks. We don't wear masks. So, are there any questions or comments about that before we move on to something that I found with regard to us and our sovereign status here? I found a document that just opens up a whole lot more for me in my overstanding, and hopefully it will do the same for you if you've not heard of this document. But are there any questions or comments with regard to anything that we've said thus far? In fact, I took it off of lecture so that if you want to star 6 with any questions or comments, let's see. I'm not gonna send the treaty to your email. I'm gonna have you to look it up in the chat. I'm gonna have that. That's gonna be something that. And I'm not going to have you look it up, but you can look it up when you.
You're going to jail real soon, Pauline. Yeah. Real soon you're going.
It would be one thing if they were even talking to us, but they're not. Did we lean our straw man in our initial? Yes, in the chat. Justice J. the straw man, and that's not our straw man, that's theirs, and they can have it. We did lien it, but let me just say this about liens, because sometimes there seems to be a little bit of clarity that I need to add there with the lien. So I'll use what they've been doing as an example. When they send you a bill, do they send it? When they send the straw a bill, do they send a court action at the same time or no? They don't. They just send a bill to a mailbox. And then if that bill is not acknowledged by someone who thinks they're a court, then they start sending things to fake courts. Okay? That's why we lien that fake fraudulent straw, because we want to put it in debt. And then we do a court action to follow that up. Because generally, the fakes still use that all caps monstrosity. We debt the monstrosity, but the monstrosity is debt anyway. So all we're doing is stating that the heirs know that that thing is debt. But see, when we do our liens, we do it in gold and silver, which is that's different from fiat debt. Because see, they eat and live off of fiat debt. But we lien it, and all of our liens are gold-backed sovereign documents. And so when we lien it in gold and silver, or gold currency, or gold coinage, that's something that thing can never pay. And the fake foreign courts cannot switch some things around in order to try and pay that. They can't, because it has to be paid in gold, lawful money. So then once, and this is the hybrid, the corpses operating. This is how they operate, their motive. They first get you to agree to a contract, and then the first thing they do is find a way to attach some debt to it. Because if they can get you thinking that you're in debt, then they can do whatever else it is that they think they can do. Like taking you in, because debt is a contract. And so we lien that fake thing, and then do a court action on it and send it away. That way, if you're doing a court action on that thing that's been pretending to be you, that's even more powerful. It's even more powerful because you're saying on the public record, I know that that thing is not me. That's why you would do a court action to follow up on the lien, the same way that they do. They're teaching us how to govern. They're teaching us how to govern. They're just doing it in a debtor society, and we're the creditor government. Yes, Islam. I'm just looking in the chat. Yes, Islam. Okay, so now the treaty, there's a treaty that I found out about. Has anyone in this, has anyone here in the sharing session heard of the Treaty of Utrecht or Utrecht? Utrecht. And I'll put it in the chat so that you can look at the spelling. Okay. And the year of it is 1713. This treaty okay, the spelling of it that I have is U-T-R-E-C-H-T. U-T-R-E-C-H-T. The Treaty of Utrecht. It is a treaty of quote-unquote amity and commerce. Okay. And that treaty, I'm going to pull it up on the screen. Just one. Because I want you to see it. Because the thing is, this treaty specifically was, first of all, I tried looking for this treaty on the Avalon website, Avalon Yale law website, where we can find the other treaties, and it was not there. So let me just put a link to it, to the document that I have.
Did everybody get the buckwheat picture of
Hold on
Pauline?
for just a moment.
Did everybody see the buckwheat
I'm going to
picture
keep
of Pauline?
talking over you. Be
cute.
quiet in here. Be quiet. Hybrids are not allowed to speak in here unless you're actually contributing intelligently. I'm going to put a link to that. Just one moment. So that you can take a, because this was actually all I was even able to find on it. But I know that some of you, if you find anything on it, please either post it on my social media page at Tajiri Bay, or text it to me. Yes, thank you. That was the only document. Here's the link to the document. That was the only document that I could find on that treaty, because it's a treaty that was enacted by France, the corporate France, and the corporate Britain. But let me share it so that we can look at it. Here it is. It's important for us because it tells where the hypothecation happened with the Iroquois. The Iroquois, our grantee talks about the Iroquois quite often because the Anasazi Confederation because that's where the Constitution came from. And, you know, a lot of our history is there. That was all of us together at that time governing the land, which we're still together, and we're still governing the land today. Can you see it on the screen? If you can, just let me know in the chat.
Yes.
Islam, thank you. Okay, the Treaty of Utrecht is a peace agreement signed in 1713 between England and France to end a war that began in Europe in 1701. This war, sometimes called Queen Anne's War, for the Queen of England, involving several European countries in a dispute about rights to the throne of Spain. In other words, they were arguing over our vast estates. The conflict spread into North America when local battles broke out between English and French colonies in Acadia, Newfoundland, and New England. It started here, and this is where it took place at. So those are, you know, of course, this is hypothecated somewhat. But we know that everything that has to do with our land starts and ends right here, as we so proclaim. So when the war ended in Europe, France surrendered a great deal of colonial territory in North America. Now, when you talk about France, we were the French, we were the, we're everybody. We were Spain, we're the Europeans, we're all of that, the originals. Not the corporate, but the originals. And we talk about Spain quite often because, you know, the Red House is where is that, and is in that jurisdiction, as are we. We are in the jurisdiction of our ancient ancestral inherited estate. But the thing that I wanted to make clear about this particular document is down here, this last bullet point here. This last bullet point on this document here, and again, this is not the actual treaty itself. This is something that came up while I was doing research on the treaty. It says the Iroquois people in southern Ontario and northern New York were declared to be British subjects. So that was some colonizers declaring someone to be a British subject. Which brings us back to everything that we've been talking about up to now. When we can take that same sentence, the Iroquois people in southern Ontario and northern New York were declared to be British subjects. If we took that sentence and put it in red in all lowercase letters, then you would be talking about us. But you're not talking about us if you got capital letters in black ink. So that's not the right Iroquois. But that's how the subrogation of the trickery happens. If some of us did not know that when you see it in capital letters in black ink, they are not talking about us. They're talking about some subjects. And we're not subjects. And then when you talk about British and Europe and European, we're that in red in all lowercase letters. That's how you know the difference between who's speaking and who's not. That's how you can tell which jurisdiction they're in. Are they speaking in red in all lowercase letters, or are they speaking in black and capital letters? Because that's going to tell you if they are who they say they are. And then if you look down a little further, same document right there, a subject is a person under the authority of someone else and considered to owe loyalty to that person. So in 1713, this was one of the things that was used so that by the time 1776 came, and 1786 came, and 1789, and 1836, and all of that. By the time all of that came, if we did not know that black ink and capital letters is not talking about us, we would have still been, you know, who we really are. We are who we are today because we know how to competently express who we are and say and state who we are. We're not just expressing it, we're stating it. But if we didn't know, then we would have thought, oh, I guess we're British subjects now. Because we would see that and think, well, this treaty says we're British subjects. But we're not. Never have been, never will be. And that's the difference between what corpses present or represent and what we write and say and state. Now, one thing I've learned about where we're going and where ancient English is going to play a huge role in us moving forward some more. And again, even if they're not using ancient English, they're still moving forward. We're all moving forward. But this treaty of Utrecht was, quote unquote, administered by France. And everything that was administered by the French Moors, okay, the French Moors, everything that was ministered by the French Moors, is known about by the hybrid French corporates, or subjects rather. They all already know about this. We've put a lot of emphasis on the Treaty for Peace and Friendship, which absolutely should be. We should put even more emphasis on it. There are some other treaties that we're going to be rebutting, and we specifically rebutted this treaty in favor of the Moors, and we're rebutting it in red and all lowercase letters. Islam, Justice Gio, were you going to say something? I see a hand on your thing.
Yes, I wanted to kind of back you up in many areas there with because few of the things that are not well known is that, in fact, this story before 1872 was quite different, because when you said the part about the French Moors,
mm-hmm.
when they talk about French trappers and French hunters of beaver and stuff like that, literally Louisiana, and if you see how large Louisiana actually is, it's over 3 million square miles.
Yes.
And that is what Empress Buriachi was given that information again, because it came all the way down through the what the heck is their names? The ones who, the Bourbon, the Bourbon, because the Bourbons are French. The Marie Antoinette and all that stuff, Marie Antoinette was actually not any of those pale people. They were royal Moors in Louisiana, not in the France over there. The France over there came into being well after 1850. All the other stuff they talk about was all about this land. from what you call South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, those places specifically, you know, where all of this stuff would flip the story and at the same time flip in our minds what is north and what is south. And by doing that, we did the rest of it ourselves, flip what is east and what is west. And so the story is it's worth the time to go over it. It's a lot of reading and stuff to do, but to do a research story before 17, actually into the 1400s. And that's why I put that link in there from Wikipedia, because it has stuff about the 1400s and things that were happening there. And even though Wikipedia stories are many times put in there by people who contribute to it, much of that is the best place to do research, because it'll run you right back into things that people have hidden, and they're finding it and putting it in Wikipedia. I just wanted to say that. I don't want to go through the whole story because it would take about 1,500 weeks to do it.
Islam. Justice Theodore put something in the chat too, framed and capitalized. That's it. Every document that we have ever seen in the Library of Congress, the original is in red and all lowercase letters. And all they did was capitalize it and put it in black ink and claim it. That's it. Islam.
They framed the Constitution that they then went to overthrow. It says it right in there. It was framed.
Yeah.
And the King James, the New King James Bible was framed out of the old tongues, you know. And I remember when I couldn't figure out what it is because it was Latin, when they were calling it dead Latin. It wasn't dead, it was just they were hiding it. So Islam, I yield.
Wow, yes. House Resolution, House Joint Resolution 331, 100 Congress, second session. It states that the treaty was written by the Iroquois. It states that it was that the Iroquois, well, of course they say it their way, the Iroquois contributed greatly to the structure of government, and you know, it was given to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. So it's right there in the Library of Congress. House Joint Resolution 331, 100 Congress, second session. And I believe that's the 1978 second session. And it will tell you that the Iroquois Confederacy wrote the Constitution. And it doesn't say specifically wrote it, it says they contributed greatly. And we know what that means. We know what that means. That means we wrote it and they framed it. They put it in a wooden frame, you know, basically. And then they hypothecated it. So, now, why did I bring this up? I brought up the Treaty of Utrecht because, yes, Justice Frank, it is a contract. However, none of us have ever signed it or seen it. But the first thing I wanted to point out about it is that if we want to know, and this is where ancient English is coming in at, if we want to know a lot of what was going on our land in terms of treaties like this that we've not really heard of, we just need to look at France's, the corporate France over there, we need to look in their library, of their quote-unquote Library of Congress, and we'll find a whole bunch of stuff about the Moors that it's in plain English right there. It will say the Iroquois. It will say, you know, the indigenous Americans. It will say specifically the Moors. It will say all of that. Even the .uk.gov, I believe it's uk.gov.uk or .legislature.uk. That website, and I posted that on my social media page some months back. I posted Set a KB on my Facebook page, but it was taken from their legislative documents. And even in their legislative documents, many of the ones that I found specifically mention Moorish courts, specifically mention Moorish courts and the authority and the sovereign status of our courts. In the UK, so look in their legislative records so that you can see, you know, that's a good place to go for research on the Moors. And they don't even hide that it's Moors this and Moors that. That we have our own everything. But if you remember, that is over there at Europa, where they were created. And it's not really even over there, it's over here. That's over here too. So our ancient English is coming in and making it so that when we see the French documents, they're so much easier to decipher. Because all we do, many of the words that we spell in ancient English are spelled either the French or the Spanish way, or the Old English way. But we put all of those together. Why? Because they all came from ancient English. All of those languages came from ancient English. And that's why no matter where you go, there is at least several dialects of English. And the spellings are different, but they're spelled phonetically. So we're still gonna yes, the Phoenician way. Justice Frank, absolutely. So our ancient English is just training our minds and our eyes and getting us ready to see the records that we need to see that France has, because remember, Morocco was a French protectorate at one time, according to the corporate. Not according to us, but according to the corporate. So they kept some things. And those documents they're still ours. They still need to be decapitalized and put in red and all lowercase letters. So does Spain over there. Spain over there has treaties and documents and things, agreements that they made with other hybrids and corpses and treaties and things when they thought that we were minors. And it mentions us specifically. The only place generally, I'll say generally because that's not even true, because when we look at the treaty, I was going to say the only place that does not mention us, that avoids mentioning us at every turn, unless they trying to call someone a sovereign citizen, which does not exist, is here. And actually not here, but the United States Corporation Company, which is not where I am, and not where you are either. But that's the only place where we've had, Moors have been looking for something that says, that validates in their mind that what's being said is true. But even there, it's starting to show up now that, yes, it's always been there. Even there. It's just been capitalized. That's it. So That, again, France and Spain, those two places, their records, their legislative records and their parliamentary records, and not so much parliamentary records, but their legislative records, you'll see much about the Moors and the Moorish courts and all that we've been doing and all of that. Okay? And then whatever research that you do, if anyone finds the actual Treaty of Utrecht, instead of just commentary on it, I'd love to see that actual treaty. Where I heard about that treaty was a curator, a French curator, a hybrid curator, was talking about rightful claim of the nobility. Rightful claim of the nobility. Because even as it stands, the throne, well, it's claimed now. It's properly claimed by all Moors now. The throne of Spain. They were saying that it was not properly claimed and that the only descendants, quote unquote, they could find was a hybrid who was doing business as the eldest son of someone in Spain, and that was a hybrid. Okay. But that, we know that that's, as long as any Moors have put on the public record who they are, then the throne is claimed properly. And it has to be done. In this same video, the curator was saying that that whoever it is that makes the rightful claim has to bring forth certain paperwork, certain documents, and the documents have to be, validated by somebody, he was saying. Well, it's not, we already know what valid documents look like, and we don't need validation from anybody to be who we really are. But we know that our documents can't look like corporate documents, And that's why we're putting so much emphasis on this, on properly expressing our documents, because we have claims, and it's not even claims, it's just, validating and affirming that we're the heirs.
Islam?
And that must be done competently. Islam.
Two things that I'm remembering some of it now. Where I first ran into the Treaty of Utrecht was in the ancient ones, the return of the ancient ones, and then in Brother Alim Bey's book, The First World Order, and if I'm not mistaken, he has the whole treaty in there. I think you have that book now too. So I think you mentioned you had it. Might be a good idea to look that up again. It's a big-ass book and a lot of work to go through it, but he had a lot of good stuff in there. Just wanted to pass that along. Islam.
Yes, I do have that that book. I'm going to put in the chat a link to the video that I saw that mentioned where the curator was talking about the nobility. And I know, and we know that whenever they talk about France and Spain, they're not even talking about anything over there, especially when you talk about claims to, thrones and inheritances, etc. Here, let me put that, put the link to that one, because I thought that was really interesting, because as it stands, the only reason that a video with that type of information in it would even come out is because, you know, the real heirs have already stood. That's the only way anything like that will come out. Because otherwise they would keep that information really close to their chest. The title of the video is, let's see, let me go here and find it. But it's a hybrid talking about the nobility and okay, here it is. It's where the French, there was someone asking what happened to the nobility. And in this video, the curator that I was, what caught my attention with what he was saying is that he said that he listed a year, I believe he said 18-something. And the link to the video is in the chat. In the video, he said that the nobility were all killed off civilly, and legally they don't exist. Legally, they're all dead. That's what it was something like that he said in the video. That legally, the nobility was killed off in 18-something, and that they're all dead civilly. Well, the only way that you can even make a claim like that, with all of us sitting here, is if we don't know how to properly rebut that. And the only way you can kill that many people, especially if they are if they truly are the nobility, is on paper. On paper. And that's really what he was getting at when he said that the nobility was killed off civilly and legally. If we didn't properly rebut, then where are we really?
Islam.
Islam.
And after the paper genocide, which had to start before the 1872, actually way before that, when they were still meeting in the bars and coffee shops in London, New York, and because that's where those places were that the Freemasons were formed. It's not over there. Mm-hmm. It was over here. Mm-hmm. And they were doing that and rewriting. In fact, it goes all the way back to the 325, when they talked about changing the Bible and stuff.
Yes.
Yes, it goes back to that, because that's when all the changes started getting instituted, the language that was used getting, again, paper genocided, because it was called the dead language. So all of these things didn't happen way back in anything. They happened all, actually, if you take the 580 years out that they added, it's less than 1,000 years since all of these things have happened.
Yeah.
But the 580 gives them some more distance so they can make up a lot of things that, well, not make up, just write up. So that is part of the reason why we get we seem to get disconnects, which is what I was doing with the numbers when I put that since 1956 to 2018, which was 62 years that we were without consular courts. 2018, in April, we first formed consular courts, but we started forming it in November, 2017. So we are today in the 66th year from the time consular courts were paper genocided to now. So all of this stuff, there's nothing going on that's not like. It all adds up. Numbers tell the story. Islam.
Yeah. Wow. Let me see. That is. That's amazing.
Pauline, they're coming for you. You better go lock.
So you said, let me see. I'm going to actually do. I wanted to see this too. 2021 minus 66. Wow, Justice Gio, that's great math. That's 1955.
Yep, it takes you right back to 1956. That's when they so-called suspended the discontinued consular courts, which they had absolutely zero authority to do anything with us. But it seems that way, and so that's why we have so many of our people fighting the consular court, because the whole consular understanding was papered over with something else. So people no longer knew what that meant. They tied up with ambassadorship and consular stuff, when in fact, it's exactly the opposite. But now, we're here, we're not going anywhere. There are.
Yeah. You know, that was, Justice Gio, that was one of the eye-openers for me when we first started this work from this, you know, from our perspective, is I was just thinking, can we start our own court here? That was the question that I was asking myself in 2017, like, can we really do that? And the more I listened to our teachers, the more I knew it just hit my truth center. And it made sense, because I was just thinking, you know, even before that, when I was asleep and I was about to wake up, all I was thinking was that the hybrids, and I didn't know they were hybrid at the time, but I was thinking these, you know, foreigners, you know, those people, they're placing the goal so far out that we're never going to catch them. No. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking when I was asleep. And that was right before I woke up, because all I was thinking was, how can we beat their courts? That's what I was thinking even in my sleep, is these courts are rampant.
Yes.
And then when I woke up, it hit, you know, it makes complete sense. They kept moving the goal because they don't own no gold. So they just made it seem like they were moving a goal. We've been in the law the whole time. Go ahead, Justin.
Just that one of the things that started to get my attention on this was, and again, I could not connect both of them at the time. I could not connect Moorish heritage with what was going on, but when I started seeing in the late 70s, I started reading about recombinant DNA. And I started learning about recombinant DNA, and then I learned that nothing they were saying about DNA and recombinant DNA has anything to do. So it's much later on that I could figure out that, oh, that's because we're talking about different things. Because the recombinant DNA, which is what we would say is the RNA, the recombinant DNA triggers every time something would threaten us, to the point where we might go to sleep for an extra 1,000 years. The DNA would trigger, and when it triggers, it almost immediately wakes up, and there's these 7 scholars. It wakes up the 7 chakras and let us know that we must pay attention to them. Because back in '56, the same time the stuff was closed down, that was when the T-Lobsang Lampa came to this land from Tibet. He was one of the first, he was one of the very first monks, Tibetan monks, that came to the land to bring back the story. And if people research that, you'll find he wrote about 17 or 18 books. And I was interested in those things when I had no clue why I was interested in them, again, way back in the day. But it is showing up because it all comes out. It's always been there, and we just have to, and even the stories today about bad China, good U.S., bad this, good that, these people, they're devious, but then they had to be. We made them. And we are a heck of a whole lot more devious to have put this whole thing together and fooled ourselves into thinking that stuff was being done to us, when we are actually doing it to ourselves, and must flip that switch. I'm going to rest with Islam.
Yes. You know, that's one of the concepts, and it's not even a concept, it's the truth. It's a law, it's a principle, that no one is doing anything to us. We're doing it to ourselves if something happens. And that includes all the awesome stuff, because that's the way I'm looking at it. If awesome is going to happen, we're going to make it happen. You know, and if something negative is happening, and something that we perceive to be negative, because there's really kind of like nothing negative that can happen. All of it's going to be for our good. The universe conspires for our good. So it's not going to be anything, it might look negative to some, but to others it's just like, you know, when I was taken, some people, and I wasn't taken, I went. Some people think that that's a bad thing, and I'm thinking, and I know, and I say it here, proclaim that that was one of the most powerful events that has ever happened to me in my life since I've been here, is going into the POW camp voluntarily at my own will, because I could have walked away, and seeing our courts do what they did in there. So nothing's happening to us by happenstance. We make everything happen. Islam.
The way I put it is, nothing is happening to us. We are happening to everything. Yes. Just before I came into this class, I was listening and chatting with a Moor. And I was actually starting to get upset with him. I said, okay, I got to slow down and explain to him, because I've been working with him for 2 years. And he's not on this class, and I've always asked him to come on everything and send him the links and stuff. And he tells me today that they're coming to take his house. So I asked him, well, remember when we did these things? And I said, did you? No, I've got them already, but I haven't done it. So for 2 years, and then he says he wants to blame everything else for what's happening to him. And he is happening to himself. just like we've all done. Which is why, when you think about it, the crazy Khazarians, you know, that they call themselves Jews, they know why they refer to us as the great trickster. Because we had to trick ourselves into thinking that anything is going wrong for it to go the way it is. We literally cannot do anything that we don't think, which is why if we think it, and it says the man, woman think it in his, her heart, well, the heart and the mind connect, and yes, they make the things that we think. Every time we think them. Islam.
Truth. 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 No one has any authority over us because as we think, so it is. Oldin ma'olderan yunilidnisit imanga dolderan in Turkish. When we intend the thing, our command is be, and it is. That's it.
Frank, you see what he put in there?
Let me see. Yes, I see.
Did you read it all the way to the end?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Justice Frank.
I did.
That's
Justice
evil.
Frank.
But evil is cool,
priceless.
but evil is lived backwards, remember.
Yes, yes, Islam. You know, there is a saying in Arabic. It says, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." That is, there is no strength nor power except in Allah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end.
Yep.
That's the more.
Allah Akbar.
Yes, that part that they done made, you know, yeah. You say that and all types of algorithms going crazy. Yep. Justice Geo, now the YouTube video gonna be positively.
See, this is the reason why they tried to turn Islam into terrorism in the 70s and 80s. The Vietnam War was finished. They were finished, and they got us to give them one more cycle. And that cycle went from the 80s into the 2000 to 2009, 2010. Interesting. Check Noble Drew Ali's prophecies, and he'll say, hey, there's going to be till the third or fourth generation before we started to pay attention, because that's when attention is going to pay us with everything that it's been holding on to, you know, and it is. It's paying it right now. Yeah. So, by the way, somebody wrote in there that Allah is a woman. Allah is, period. Not a man or a woman. Allah is arm, leg, arm, head, and all of us have them. All of us have them. But there's a lot more to that story. And it's not, we have to get away from arguing about that point and just fix ourselves. And then we could go drink a bunch of liquor. By the way, we're the ones that created liquor. The Pale people didn't do that. We're the ones that created everything that's ever been used anywhere. They didn't do it. We did it to ourselves when we wanted to. That was a part of going to sleep. You just have to take enough, what to call it then? You just have to take enough of that to push us over the edge for a little while. And now we're back. Islam. I yield this time not to say any more today.
Islam. One last thing I want to say before we take a pause. The Grand Rising
Oh, I went out too. Yeah, it seems Empress Light left the meeting temporarily, but she should be back. I can see your picture, so that's still on here. And Mose, all you have to do is study yourself, and you'll know. So that's what Nova Jordan is talking about when he says study yourself, because then you'll know who you really are, and once you know that, it's over. Islam, Empress Light is back. Islam.
Yes, Islam. Thank you, Justice Gio. I was going to say the Grand Rising looks like the stairs on a pyramid. We go up, and then we have, yes, Empress Patricia in the chat, that is brilliant, androgynous equals Allah, Islam. We go up, and then we are given a little bit of time at that degree, and then we go up again, and then we're given a little bit of time at that degree, and then we go up again, and we just keep going up. That's what they call the stairway to heaven, is the degree. We go up, and then because see, a Moor said to me recently, one of the Moors said that she feels like something really big is about to happen. And what she's feeling may be true for her. I was thinking overall, all the great things have been happening the whole time anyway. There have been awesome things happening repeatedly, over and over and over again. Over and over and over again, every single day. All it takes is for one Moor to say, I'm a Moorish American, to someone who they've never said that to before. That's the great big bang and the big, that's what it is. So a lot of times people are looking for a big, giant something to happen, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It can be rise, study at that level, demonstrate at that level, and then the ancestors give more keys, and then we rise again, and we study at that level, and we become competent and become the heirs at that level where we're so competent that we're governing our own vast estate at that level. And we're doing that anyway. We're already governing. That's not something that's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year. We're already governing, period. Been doing that. So, but there are degrees, and we just keep going up and up and up and up and up and up. And as long as we keep doing that, which we are, we're not going anywhere. This is our home. We're here. All of that. So we're grateful for where we are right now, and that's going to continue. And we are going to pause here, and we'll meet back up on Wednesday at 12 noon. And sometime soon, I believe, well, we may even do it this week. I'm thinking maybe this week we will migrate over to YouTube Live and just start doing the sharing from YouTube Live. We'll see how it goes, and we'll put the information out there so that everyone can see. I like this setting, though. So, at least one of these is going to be done a week. At least once a week, we're going to still meet here because I like this setting. I think that we get to talk to one another and see one another and everything on this setting. So we may take the Wednesday and we'll see. Just stay posted, and we'll let you know which one we migrate on to YouTube Live, and then the other we'll keep that one going. So, as above, so below, Islam. Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous. Islam.
Peace and grand rising to you.
Islam.
Islam, Morris.
Islam.
Much love. Grand rising to the Moors. Islam. Islam.
Grand rising.
Grand rising.
Grand rising. Islam.